Hi everybody. Okay, currently spinning the fabulous Elton John. This is his greatest hits. And if you don't have your notebook already, go ahead and get your notebook because we are going to continue the notes on China. Okay? So, Jalo! Hey, baby! Do you see Jalo? Is he coming? Hi! Hi! You say hi? I don't know how my my videotaping is here. Anyway, okay. So, hopefully you have your notes by now. Turn down Elton. And again, you can take your notes first and then do the RFK, or you can do the RFK first and then listen to the lecture and take notes. Whichever you prefer. Just make sure you take a picture of them and submit them to Google Classroom. Okay, so yes, we ended up the last lecture on the nationalists were basically winning and the communists were losing. And all of that is going to change with the beginning of World War II in Asia. And the beginning of World War II in Asia is when Japan invades Manchuria, which is a region in China, sparking World War II. And what happens is the nationalists and the communists basically choose to stop fighting each other to concentrate on their true enemy. They're kind of like, okay, yeah, we can't stand each other, but at least we're all Chinese. And let's agree to stop fighting and focus on beating the Japanese. The nationalists and communists never fought side by side. They just simply chose to not fight each other any longer. Okay, so nationalists and communists halt their own civil war in order to fight their common enemy, the Japanese. Remember, the Japanese are the one that got the land in World War I. Okay, I have now fast-forwarded you to World War II ends. And at this point, the communists are now more powerful than the nationalists. And the reason for that is because Mao gained followers during the Long March. Remember, he promised them literacy, land, and food. And his soldiers were very nice to the peasants, okay? And because of their fighting technique, it's guerrilla warfare. Mao was amazing at teaching this type of technique. The communists are going to beat the nationalists, and the nationalists are going to end up right here. This red island right here is known as Taiwan. And this is all mainland China. Taiwan is very close, clearly, to China. And Taiwan will be ruled by Chiang Kai-shek for years until he dies naturally. But what you should know is Taiwan is capitalist. Okay, they have a capitalist economy, and that means private property. Please, I keep stressing that at this time in the story of China, under communist rule, there is no private property. Okay? Okay, so let's talk about Mao. Mao. Okay, Mao, he's born in 1893 and died in 1976. And Mao does get credit. He definitely gets credit for making China stand on its own again, making China sufficient again for Chinese, kicking out the foreigners in China, making a stronghold. He basically takes back China. He does get the credit for that. And he is known for a few things. So we're just going to go through them. The first thing besides taking back China, but he's known for his 5-year plan. And this is where he does fulfill the promises to the peasants. Under the Agrarian Land Reform Law, he basically takes the land from the large landowners in order to disperse the land to the peasants. He basically gives parcels of land to the peasants. If you chose to fight Mao on this, you were eliminated. You were killed. Millions of landowners were executed because they would not give up their land. So he does fulfill his promise. He does. The next thing he does after this 5-year plan, which was successful, he decides to do what's called the Great Leap Forward. And this is actually a great leap backwards. It doesn't succeed. He tries to make reforms that the people honestly don't want. And one of the main components to the Great Leap Forward were called communes. And basically communes are large collective farms where people, they have to live together in dormitories, they have to eat together in the same common hall, they have to work all day together doing the exact same thing with each other. And there's no incentive because all the profit goes to the state. It doesn't matter how well you work, you are still going to receive the same rationing as the person who's a total lazy butt next to you. So there's no incentive. And the people hate it. He had small communes during the 5-year plan, but during the Great Leap Forward, he just explodes them and makes them so big and they become absolutely inefficient. And people, they don't work. They don't work to their abilities because there's no incentive. Okay. The inability for them to work actually causes this incredible famine where over 20 million people will starve to death. And that's definitely due to the crop failure because of the collective farms. Okay. The other thing that Mao is known for is the Cultural Revolution. This is an incredibly interesting portion of history for China. And it lasts 10 years. And for many people, it is 10 years of total hell. Okay, let's set the scene. Mao, at this point, because of the Great Leap Forward and how unsuccessful it was, other rising politicians start to bring in some capitalistic ideas. And Mao hates capitalism. So he initiates the Cultural Revolution. And he calls upon the youth and creates what are called the Red Guard. The Red Guard are made up of male and female, mainly teenagers, young adults. And he gives them the power to basically destroy what he calls the elite or bourgeoisie attitude. He gives them the power to eliminate anybody who is academically inclined or an intellect, anybody who works in a university or a school. For instance, me, as a teacher, I would be totally targeted. All my books would be burned. Anything academic was targeted. It was a time where political leaders who did try to bring in any capitalistic idea, they were publicly humiliated, they were imprisoned, they were tortured, they were killed. Many of them committed suicide themselves because of the shame. Property was taken. And a lot of people were sent out to the countryside to become re-educated in the ways of a peasant, to work with their hands. And the new hero, you might say, was a person that worked with their hands, not their brain. Okay, anybody who was an academic at all you were in harm's way. And it was a really intense 10 years, and people turned on each other. Kids turned on their own parents, and they kind of got swept up in the wave of having a little power. And the peer pressure to join the Red Guard was very high. And within the Cultural Revolution itself, factions fought against each other. And it honestly got so out of control that even Mao had to recognize that it was a mistake. Because if you think about this, everybody who was educated was now considered the enemy, and the whole country's falling apart. The entire university system fell apart. National testing was no longer given. Classes weren't in session. Books were burned. Therefore, nobody's learning anything. They're not learning how to even live. They're not learning to be businessmen. They're not learning to be doctors, lawyers, you name it. They're not learning. So they're creating this entire generation of people who will not even be functioning members of society that will better society. Okay, two of the main things that they like always shouted were learn revolution by making revolution. To rebel is justified. And during this time, there was the creation of this. This was known as the Little Red Book. It is a compilation of sayings of Mao. This book was given to every member of the Red Guard. So all these teenagers, this is now what they're reading. This is it. This is all they get to read. And I want you just to look at this book, and I'm going to turn the pages, and I want you just to see what it reminds you of. And here's a picture of Mao. And you have this little thing right here. It's like a little bookmark that you can take it out, mark your page for that you really want to remember. Okay, so if you, as I was just flipping through this, are reminded of a very small Bible, you are correct. That was the intention. Because remember, in communism, there is, in the communism back during the Mao days, there is no private property. And in communism at this time, there is no religious freedom. Because communism becomes the religion. This is it. All religions were persecuted. Religious leaders were sent out to the countryside to do hard work and to become re-educated. As a matter of fact, a connection to our Cold War unit, the lines in the Pledge of Allegiance, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, under God. Those two words, under God, those were added in the 1950s during the height of the Cold War, because the United States specifically wanted to further ourselves from the idea of communism, because we hated communism that much. We wanted to contain communism, and we wanted to separate ourselves that much that we actually inserted those two words into our Pledge of Allegiance, which actually have caused a lot of problems. And it's ironic because we inserted the idea of following a certain religion into our pledge, which actually goes against our First Amendment. Because remember, in our First Amendment, we have those 5 freedoms.